All right. So let's start with an example. The one I'd like to give is imagine that you are raising a child and you feed them, you educate them, you want them to succeed, but you pass a strict house rule. Now, the day that they turn 18 or the day that they grow more than taller than 5'5", you're going to lock them in the basement and throw away the key. Now, what would this do to the kid? As in, you may ask, what is the kid's purpose now? The kid has one option to, look forward to. They would stunt their own growth. They would starve themselves on purpose just so that they are barely surviving, but not cutting out that, threshold of 5'5". It may sound like a plot to some sci-fi movie, but we're here to talk about the Indian economy, right? And that is what I'm hinting towards. My name is Atharva Kamble. I'm from Indian Institute of Management, Tiruchirappalli. And today we're going to talk about the India's middle, the missing middle, and how we literally legislated our own factories into permanent state of infancies. So historically, developing nations follow a standard economic staircase. You moved the surplus level from agriculture to low skilled manufacturing and finally to the services, something that we did learn in our Indian economic policy course, and something that did catch my attention as well because we were blatantly just handicapped, purposefully restricting our own growth in that sector. India did a massive and clumsy, leap ahead. We went directly from agriculture into the services and we took a step back on the manufacturing part of it. What was the reason? The reason was, in my terms, in the example that I gave, it was the basement rule. Back in phase two of our Indian economic history, socialism struck with a vengeance. We passed the MRTP Act in 1969, treating scales and bigness as literal crime. Then came the absolute shock, surprise. It dictated that any factory with 100 or more workers cannot fire anyone or shut down without government permission. Permission that is virtually never granted. And it has been recorded in the history, in the growth of the uh, companies that we have seen throughout. So, what would the business do now? This was the Peter Pan syndrome. They refused to grow. They would try to take as much as 99 workers, but then would take a step back, hesitate from hiring the 100th one, because as soon as they hire the 100th worker, they would be enforced some rules and laws that the government had made, the MRTP Act. So the standard corporate advice that I have here in order to counter this would be to repeal the labor laws. But in a noisy democracy, that would be a political suicide, to be honest. So here is what I think of, like coming from my own perspective and the way I see this happening. We can charter manufacturing cities, basically call them CMCs or anything. This would be hyper autonomous zones entirely exempt from the chapter VB of the IDA. Firms can hire and fire based purely on market demand. This would severely reduce their handicap and would allow them to look forward towards growth and plan for bigger endeavors. But we pair this brutal efficiency with a radical safety net, which can be stated as, let's say, the universal basic income. That means that for the displaced worker in these zones, we already know direct benefit transfers via the Jam Trinity work beautifully because it eliminates the leakages. So instead of forcing a factory to keep a redundant worker, what we would do is kill its global competitiveness. The state provides a transition between UBI and funded it with like massive corporate taxes that these mega factories will be generating. I see this as a benefit from both ends, and the barriers are gone. The politicians suffer from the time inconsistency problem, the urge to break the long term rule for the short term election wins. Plus, our gross fiscal deficit leaves very little room for the initial capital expenditure. The alternate could be worse, and I think that it's time we let our factories go as well because somehow we have to step forward towards innovation and take bigger leaps in this matter. So that will be all from my end, and thank you.